Welcome to Learn or Be Learned. We've been working on this project for a while now, and we're finally ready to share it with you. It's been under works for a good minute, and if you're on YouTube or Spotify, congratulations, you're watching the first video podcast of Learn or Be Learned. This is the setup that I've been working on. This is the other project for season 2. Season 2 is going to have video podcasting, but before that, this is the mini series about real estate and real estate investing, mindset, all of that with my two good buddies that are great realtors. They share not only their mindsets about buying your first home, buying your first rental property, the mindset of scaling and money and how all this works. But it's also the first time that we got to do a big project together, got to do a whole video podcasting, and I learned a lot. That's kind of why that's why everything's been so inconsistent, I could say. So, I appreciate your patience and your support and, sharing these videos and episodes. And I'm really excited to share this with you guys, honestly. And, please let me know what you guys think. And, without further ado, let's get right into this mini series, 6 episodes. We actually recorded them all in one batch and, rookie mistake, live and learn, but I cut them in segments, but I didn't properly address the ending of each episode. So some of the episodes have all right, catch you in the next episode. And then some of them are just cut right there abruptly. So, live and learn, but I think it was still really awesome, which I'd love to hear what you guys think. And, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Thanks.
I would really say abundance or scarcity is a mindset. It's actually not a resource. It's not about resources, which is really interesting, right? Because usually you have scarcity or abundance in terms of resources. Let me give you some very obvious examples, and I'll give you some more nuanced examples. Obvious example, right? I think we would have seen, or heard stories of children of very affluent families calling dad for money, right? They would have gotten to wherever they're at on a private jet, and they're like, I need more money, right? They have a scarcity mindset, even though their family might have a lot of resources. And you see the opposite, right? We've seen that in other countries, especially, right? Maybe Latin America and Africa and parts of Asia. Some of these countries are economically just not as affluent, but they're really happy. And there's countries like, I think it's Bhutan, if I'm not mistaken, that measures their country's success not by GDP, but gross domestic happiness index.
Interesting.
How happy are the people? Because they're like, we're not focused on economic growth. Our people have whatever they need to live. Yeah. How happy are they? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And pardon me if I got the country wrong, right? But that tells you about abundance mindset. That whole country has an abundance mindset. Mm-hmm. It's not about money in the bank or precious metals or economic trade routes. How happy are people? Because they kind of get to the end of it, right? You might agree with me, what is the purpose of religion, right? It's for clarity and ultimately seeking a good set of values. And sometimes people lose the tree for the forest, right? Or forest for the trees. I'm really bad with metaphors. I keep butchering all of them. The point is that sometimes people forget the end goal of religion and focus on the rituals. Right. And similarly, right, you forget the end goal of, what is resources supposed to do? It's supposed to provide for you so you can be comfortable and then happy. Mm-hmm. Some people are just like, then I'm just going to be happy, right?
I have to say, continuing off of what he mentioned and connecting it to real estate is he mentioned what's the end goal, and we think about in real estate, at least for me personally, it's when I talk to a client, I'm always thinking about, what is the end goal here? Is it just that closing table and that is it? But for me, it's there's a story after that. I will know a typical average homeowner will live in the house for 30 years. And, if you think about it, I want to live there for 30 years too. I want to be in that community. I want to be part of them. I want to get involved. And I think about the memories, the experiences, the birthday parties, the late night drinks, the late night conversations, the buffet that we're going to go out. All those personal memories that could happen in the future. I'm that's the end goal. So it's it's just that experience of living. You mentioned the gross product. What is it? For the Tibetan people, basically for the experience. No, sorry. I think it is Tibet.
Did I say Tibet?
You did.
I said Bhutan.
Oh, Bhutan. Oh, sorry, my apologies. I thought you said Bhutan.
I don't think Tibet.
Okay, my bad. So Bhutan. So Bhutan, right?
Domestic happiness.
Yeah, gross domestic happiness, right?
Yeah.
So there's a promoter score that I learned. This is a score metric that I learned from one of my clients who turned to a really good friend. He mentioned one simple act that I did rated my level of promotion of happiness for his service. So the term is called NPO. Or NPS, Net Promoter Score. It's called Net Promoter Score. Do you guys know what that is?
I'm very familiar with Net Promoter Score.
And that was my first time learning it because based on the action.
You should just quick refresher of what it means for the people listening.
So Net Promoter Score basically says you, in the most layman terms, going above and beyond than what is expected of you.
So let me give a little bit more of a mathematical definition of Net Promoter Score. So Net Promoter Score is when you provide a service, you ask people, are you happy? Are you neutral? Are you negative? Right? Thumbs up is +1. Meh is 0. Minus is -1. And, some of these indexes get very complex because they weight them, right? Negative is 3, positive is 1, because that's really how, behavior is working. But for our sake, let's just call it 1, 0, -1. I provide a service. Both of you are there. You like my service. You say you don't like my service. I have a Net Promoter Score of 0. +1, -1, 0. And the idea is that it's on a -100 to a +100 scale. And most large businesses just aim to be positive. They're not even shooting for a right, number. Most airlines and a lot of banks are just negative. And these are big businesses that we know. But that's just because people who are unhappy tell more people than people who are happy. Mm-hmm. So Net Promoter Score is how many people are net promoting your business with good messages, as opposed to maybe a net negative score, I guess. Right. Who's tearing down your business with, you lose it because of a bad reputation. It's essentially measuring your reputation and customer satisfaction on a holistic scale is Net Promoter Score. And you can put a number to it. And it's a great number to measure your customer satisfaction is one, as well as growth in certain industries like training and development, and very customer service oriented or any service oriented industry. Back to you.
So if you want the mathematical definition, go to that timestamp. But I think that's actually very, very interesting because I truly did not know that was a breakdown. But that sums up because if you think about what they're measuring, it is the customer's reaction to the service, right? And what I said was going above and beyond in terms of my perspective. When you go above and beyond the person who's providing the service, then the customer is happy with the service you provided. So you get +1 or -1 or 0 is he didn't go that far. And for me, when he talked about the NPS and my client was talking about it, the service that I just genuinely thought it was the right thing to do was cleaning their home before they moved. And I was like, that is something that should be taken care of. They shouldn't have to worry about it. They have headaches of having to move in. All that stuff should be taken care of. So it should be just them getting the keys, moving in, clean home, settled in, right? And that process of thinking that extra thought was what established our relationship even more. And those are the things that's the end goal is for me, right? It's those memories, those conversations, because that will eventually blossom up. We talk about you mentioned not wasting people's time. Last thing we have in this world is our time. That is literally running out the moment we were born. And if you think about it, respecting it and making
about having a scarcity mindset. Oh my God. You're born and your time into an end has begun. Yeah. Oh my God.
No,
I'm sorry, just picking on you.
No, literally, it's honestly, it's a fact.
It's the most limited resource we have.
The Ryan Holiday quote, or the wording he used, was it memento mori?
Memento mori, yes. Memento mori, dude. Yes, indeed.
Which basically translates to what he's saying is the moment you live, you're constantly taking your last breath, right? You're one breath closer to your last.
The longer you live, the closer you are to death.
And the thing about it is we're in the present, right? There's I'm gonna quote Kung Fu Panda.
Oh, I love Kung Fu Panda.
The scene where he talks about the past, the future, and the present. The present is what we have because it is a gift, right? And I think about this, it is true. This is a gift. So having a chance to talk to someone, we're social creatures and we love talking. We're here in a podcast talking about real estate and ourselves
And Kung Fu Panda.
and Kung Fu Panda, right? Yeah, yeah, and it's building up the story of who we are at the end of the day. And I think these are the things that I look for at the end of the day. It's like I got into real estate because I want to change the name. I want to make the brand be more valuable, and at the end of the day, tell a good story when you're like at the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, what I really like about being in this industry is contribution. You have an opportunity for unlimited and creative contribution. We've all done personality assessments, right? We all know that for all three of us, our top need is contribution. And real estate is a great way to serve other people, because sometimes they don't even know what they need. And for you to go figure it out and then deliver it to them, it's like a game. It's exciting for me, and it's value for them. And it's a win-win relationship. I get to solve a puzzle, and it's a fresh puzzle, every client. Sometimes multiple puzzles per client, right? Depending on the situation.
I would argue you could say that for, I guess, just about anything, right? It's
like any business?
Yeah, any business, something like that. So what would make real estate unique in that aspect for you?
Everybody needs real estate. And so it's every common person needs real estate. You need a place to live. You need an apartment to rent, a house to buy. Maybe you're moving, something, right? The thing when we talk about the investment side of our business, you're dealing with somebody who's typically, we'll call them middle-aged, right? Who's worked themselves to a very good salary, very comfortable position in life, and now they have an abundance of savings that they're trying to reinvest. And so the people you're dealing with, they're not, although there's an abundance of those individuals, they are not the common person necessarily. And if you look at contribution, yeah, everybody needs contribution. Everybody needs to feel validated, etc. But when you can provide support indiscriminately to everyone, that is very satisfying, right? Because you're not doing charity, right? And it's not a handout. And it's not a service only affordable by certain classes of people. This is something where we can contribute equivalently or to the level of need to anybody and everybody. And that is really exciting for me, because you're not pigeonholing yourself on who is your target market to support. I will say this. I mean, there are some people who, might not want to rent a long-term place or sign a lease or buy a house, right? Digital nomads per se. And I know you interviewed a digital nomad recently.
I did. They were a digital nomad couple. If you look back in the podcast, it's about maybe like episode 52 or something around that range. It's a couple who went from living in Florida, working, different jobs or whatever. They became web developers, so basically got a remote job, and then became digital nomads, where they could basically work on their website, developing clients and all that stuff from different places every 1 to 3 months.
Right. So for those individuals, that buying a house or a long-term lease is probably not relevant, right. But that's a very small portion of the population. But for everybody else, you're there to be able to serve them.
Right. Most people settle. They don't, have that nomadic lifestyle. So I do see the appeal in wanting to help people with, a really important decision in their life. I think, generally people have a few really big defining moments that people can expect, right? I think all of us, we have unique lives. We all have a different story. There are always going to be things we can't expect that may be huge changes in our life. But I think there are a few events in everybody's life that they can expect, like buying a home. Maybe not for everyone, but maybe some people getting married, things like that, right? So there are big events that a lot of people would expect in their life, and buying a house is definitely one that is, I think it also scares a lot of people because it's never taught in school. You don't actually know where to start. Thankfully, now we have things like YouTube and things so people can start Googling, but I couldn't imagine the headache even just like 15 years ago. It's like, well, I want a house. Where do I start, right? So it's always that network is also important, and it's always been important.
Technology accelerates, but technology cannot always substitute, right? For example, we have companies that are real estate tech companies. Zillow, Open Door. What are some of the other ones?
We have Orchard.
Orchard.
We have OfferPad.
OfferPad, yeah.
Trulia, and a couple more.
So a couple of more, right? Redfin, etc.
Realtor.com.
Right. And so if we take two examples, right? Zillow and Open Door. Zillow used their algorithm to buy a bunch of houses and to resell based off of their Zestimate. And that division went bankrupt because they found out that they were overpaying for these homes. So it was a good intention, but because you cannot apply broad stroke algorithms, even if they're nuanced algorithms, right? Without the human touch of the micro market, it doesn't work, right? I mean, the truth is that, is this house worth this much? Well, what neighborhood is it in? What's the school district? Right. What's the demand? How close is it to the highway? The same house 5 minutes away is not necessarily worth the same value because the entryway to the house could be more blocked off. There might only be back roads. Right. I don't know, it might be right next to whatever, yeah. Right? And so an algorithm will say there are two same houses in the same zip code, should be worth the same. Mm-hmm. But you miss out on the opportunity to drive to the house.
The emotional component of humans, right? The algorithm generally wouldn't pick that kind of thing up. Not like
it's not just emotions, it's true value. Like it's true market value that it can't always pick up.
Right, but isn't market value essentially determined by human emotion?
Yes.
Right. So they're right. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Right. Which is why I think these algorithms will say like, oh, these are 5 minutes apart. They're the same. But one might say that is the ugliest house I've ever seen in my life. Nobody buys it. Right. So things like that. Like even if it's a big home, it's a great deal. There are people that are maybe more experienced investors that would take it and, change it and turn it. I'm talking about maybe first time buyers. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
Absolutely. And then you have, I believe it's Open Door that just got fined by the federal government for deceptive trade practice, right? Tens of millions in fines. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. That is very crazy. And they're a very tech-driven company. I think it's amazing that people are trying to innovate in this space. We need innovation. Right? You talk about digital contracts. Oh my God, it's a lifesaver. Imagine trying to go through all those contracts back and forth, printing them, editing them, scanning them, faxing them. So technology has improved real estate tremendously. Virtual tours, 3D mapping of the home, etc. So there's a lot of technology that has helped. So I'm not definitely downplaying technological advances in real estate, but not all technological advances can substitute the work of a realtor. Mm-hmm. You can have tools to make realtors and real estate professionals' life easier, and that's always going to be a win. But when you try to cut out a human in the process of something that's emotional and subjective and market-driven, technology does not exist yet to do that. And until it gets to be very, very smart AI, where you're duplicating a human's brain and analysis capacity, you cannot do it with simple algorithms.
And if I may step in right at that,
yes.
That's a very great last statement to say, because I believe at the end of the day, what it means to, if you think about Berkshire Hathaway, Keller Williams, EXP, and if you put a face behind that, it's usually like the founders. They're the ones who established. Like when you think about Berkshire Hathaway, think about Warren Buffett. Oh, that man knows how to run the market and things like that. He knows what the next move is, and that comes because he has the proof, the track record, the battle scars. And me and Ramu, like the fact that he mentioned the real simple aspect of the algorithm basically being, let's say, a super amazing AI that can literally act and say the same things that a human can't say, right? When there's no distinction between them, then we're at risk. I do believe there are minute threats that were popping up and like tech was like blowing up with like the recent during pandemic with like Open Door and all these like real estate tech companies popping off. And now all of them are struggling because they didn't understand the fundamentals of what it means to be in real estate, which is, face to face, getting there, and homes are not going to sell as fast. It's not like every 4 days your home's going to go on for sale and then come back under contract. Now it's taking almost 2 months for a home to go under contract in Austin. When literally 2 months ago, within 4 days, you had a home that was like gone. People lined up, like everything disappeared. And so that is not factored in with like the current technology. Once people have mastered that, then yes, I think there's a huge risk. But that's like long ways out. Because just to imagine a Ramu and a Nithin software, right, that can imitate, that can give the same type of consulting, that is very hard. Like even we have Google that can't even translate sometimes to the way we want it. So there's like kings of technology that's missing. So that creates a lot of opportunity for people like us, who are trained in this, who understands the discrepancies, who understands how micro markets work, who understands how the entryway can look like this, the value. We can put a number on it and give you that consultation, right? I literally relabeled myself from being called a realtor to a consultant, because at the end of the day, I am doing more conversations and negotiations, and rather than like sitting behind a computer showing houses, like I have turned into more like, this is what the property looks like. This is what I think. Based on these X, Y, and Z factors, this is what I believe the decisions we can make. What do you think? And then based on that, have a conversation. And that is where we really step into just show our true form. That's what a realtor gets paid for.
It's also finding out what your clients value and delivering that value.
Precisely. Non-negotiables.
Right. And it changes for everybody. And also advising them on where they need to compromise. For example, I have a client right now that's very much into luxurious fixtures in the house. So they keep looking at all these homes that are very luxurious, which is great. We toured a house once and they were kind of scratching their heads. And I was like, this house looks beautiful. And they're like, oh, I don't know if it's luxury. And I just started pointing stuff out. And I was like, you see there's an entryway or a passageway for the back door. That's extra. There's an extra entryway for the master bedroom. You see this pillar right here. With this little awning, right, etc. These things add a luxurious value to a home, and they were like, "Oh, okay, right." So people understand when they see something, but they might not understand why or what makes it that. And we can come in and say, "If you want that, this is what it is. If you are not attracted by this, then that is not what you're attracted by at all. Let's figure out what you really are looking for instead. And if that is what it is, then here's something in your price point that works."
And one thing I want to say, just an example, the way that I try to make sure people can understand what it means to work with the realtors, I try to throw an example of a real life example. Majority of us know McKinsey & Company, right? Mm-hmm. One of the biggest global consulting companies. Their basic platform is they have a client who has a need, and they provide services. They do the research. They do all the fun stuff, go there, create a team together, do the market research, come back and present their paper on it. Real estate consultants, right, us like real estate agents, we're simply that same thing. There's a client who has a need. I want to buy a house. Very basic. The need might have like need A, need B, need C, like A to Z, different things that they want, but there's a basic need. And our job is to try to understand how can we get to the need, and here's the property for it. And that's literally what we do. There's nothing more complicated than that. And it's like sometimes
can I add to that complication?
Yeah.
Right? We often hear people saying, well, what are your requirements? 90% of the buyers we work with, the first meeting, they're like, I want a house. Yeah, I know that. I mean, obviously we're respectful, right? What kind of house? A good one, or a big one, a blue one. Right? And everybody says the same thing. A good school district in a backyard, right? Okay, well, let's define that. What is a good school district to you? What is a good backyard for you? What are your other requirements? Most people don't know what they want. Being able to talk to somebody and understand what their lifestyle is, what their future looks like, and where they are in their stage of life, and making recommendations and going back and forth to clarify those requirements is the big step, right? It's like what Abraham Lincoln said.
Step number one.
He said, if you give me an hour to chop down a tree, I'll spend 45 minutes sharpening the axe. There are no bad answers. There are only bad questions. So if we know exactly what we're looking for, it's easy
the other way around
to make.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think you meant there's only bad answers, not bad questions. Or did you mean the other way?
I meant the other. No, I said what I meant.
There's bad questions.
It is true. Like I can.
Yeah, so this is not to be confused with like school where the teacher says there's no dumb questions. That's not what I'm talking about, right? Okay. There are no dumb questions, but if you talk about good questions or bad questions, let's talk about it in a purely psychological standpoint, right? If you're in an emotionally distraught state, and the question you ask for yourself is, what's wrong with me? Your brain is a very complicated computer. It will find a great answer for what's wrong with you. But if you ask yourself, what can I do to feel better? Your brain is a very good computer. It will find a great answer to make yourself feel better. The answer is typically a byproduct of the question.
Right.
Most people, there's a great book called Question Behind the Question. What is the question behind the question? Often people will ask you a question, and in real estate, you'll understand this very quickly. You'll start answering all the things, and then they'll ask you almost the same question again. And you're scratching your head like, I just explained it. Because that's not actually what they're looking for. They either don't know how to state what they're actually asking, or they think it's a lead-in question to soften their actual real question. And you have to find a very sweet way to cut the BS. What is the real question? Is this what you're asking? Or sometimes, when you do this for long enough, you can see patterns. So I'll kind of answer the first question and really answer the real question they're asking. And they'll be halfway through the next question when they realize, oh, you already knew where I was going with this. That's not my first rodeo, right? Yeah. And that's when you really, that's when the trust starts.
Right. So I think this is a great segue into the audience probably now wondering, okay, so real estate is important. I totally get it. I'm seeing your guys' perspective. And I think a lot of people out there are, especially, the tail end of millennials and the beginning of Gen Z, I think are now the new, first-time home buyers coming into the market. What are the steps that someone should take when buying a home?
Great question.
And before you answer that, I want you guys to tune in next week I want you guys to tune into the next episode where they will go further into talking about what does it take to buy a home, what do you need, and everything to get you started. If that sounds interesting, just stay tuned. We have some great conversations coming up next.
We'll see you on the next episode.
Wait, I'll see you in the next episode. That was so bad.
You want to redo that part?
Let's do that wrong.
Okay.
Wait, was that the ending of that episode?
Yeah.
Okay, then the end. Yeah, okay.
Okay.